So good morning. Good morning, everyone. As we're all filing in, if you could please type your name, role, and organization in the chat so we know who's represented today.
Oh. We see Zach, an analyst for KCHD. We see Annette Fry. Christina
Excellent.
Newman. Wow, thank you. Oh, wow, look at this. Communications coordinator.
Good morning, Connie. Looks like we have Stacy here. Excellent. Welcome.
Lisa, Krista.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us.
We're going to give folks another minute or so to put in their information here, and then we'll get started, but we know it sometimes takes a little bit to get comfortable. So welcome. I see lots more people coming in.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Amber, Angel, Stacy. Wow, okay. This is wonderful.
Okay.
Yes, the recording will be available in a follow-up email. Yes.
All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the 14th training in our series, Storytelling as a Public Health Tool. So we know that many of you have attended our other trainings in this series, but in case you're new, we are from Health Literacy Media, HLM for short, and are working with the Kansas City Health Department to develop a series of workshops as well as health materials for you, covering topics such as clear communication, talking about COVID-19 with patients, and much more. So HLM is a health communication group out of St. Louis, Missouri, who specializes in helping people communicate clearly about health. My name is Elizabeth Bertine Flaherty, and I'm a Senior Advisor of Health Literacy and Communication at HLM. And I'm here with my fantastic colleague, Stephanie Gonzalez, our Transplant Education Manager. And today we also need to thank our colleague, Jeremy Day, who is helping with the technical end of things today. So thank you to Jeremy. All right. So before we start, we want to tell you a few things about this workshop. So as several people have noted during the workshop, we will be recording this training so that KCHD can make it available on their website. Your audio is muted to lower background noise. However, we absolutely want you to participate and have created some activities to make sure that's possible. So feel free to turn on your camera, use the chat box and Zoom polls, or unmute your audio to respond to or ask questions. After the workshop, we'll ask you to fill out a short survey, and then in the next day or two, we will send you a summary of the concepts we discussed today. So we're very glad you've joined us, and let's get started. So today we're talking about using storytelling and how you can use it to improve patient health. So to quote Jonathan Gottschall in his book, The Storytelling Animal, we tell stories all day long, and when we go to sleep, we dream stories all night long. Humans have been using stories to entertain, communicate, and share information for thousands of years. However, more recent studies looking at the science of storytelling show that storytelling can be beneficial to both healthcare professionals and patients. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to ask you to respond to this question, and we're going to try to create a word cloud out of it. So I'm going to drop the link for this in the chat. And then Jeremy is going to display for us as well a QR code if that's easier for folks. So whatever's easier for folks to use, it's fine. But the question that we'd like you to answer is, when you think of storytelling, what words or phrases come to mind? So feel free to write out anything you think of. You can contribute more than one. So if you have a couple of ideas in mind, that is fantastic. Okay, so let's see. And we'll let Jeremy click present there. Excellent. We'll get a nice image of what's coming up from everybody here. So culture, yeah, journey, yeah, absolutely. Imagination, community, yeah, community is really important. Catching the audience, yeah, absolutely. I see storytelling as a fantasy for some people. Yeah, characters. Um, Recollection, yeah, so going back maybe to personal history or stories. Culture looks like it's really emerging as an important one here. I know we have still some people who are typing here, which is great. Yeah, entertainment, emotional, interesting. We're going to talk about how emotion plays a role in this. Nostalgia, yeah, fun information. Yeah, absolutely. We hope that storytelling can be something that's fun. All right, about the person. So maybe that personalized sense. Connection, yeah, we're absolutely going to talk about the importance of that too.
That's a great one.
Yeah, fantastic. That's so important to this. Educational, yeah. And we're going to talk about how that entertainment and the education really comes together when we start talking about healthcare. Yeah, experiences sharing. Yeah, great examples here. Creativity, yeah. And we certainly recognize the importance of creativity and history there. Yeah, that's huge. Great examples. Yeah, understanding and certainly creating understanding. All right, so those are some absolutely fantastic examples. Thank you for taking the time to add those in and share with all of us. These are fantastic word choices, and they really look at a variety of perspectives here, which is great and kind of what we're looking for. So what we're going to have you do next is we are going to have you do a quick Zoom poll. I know this is a lot all at once. Think of this as a great morning wake up process here. But we're going to ask you to take a look at this poll real quickly and look through the options. And what we'd like you to do is check any and all of the options that apply to you. So we'll give Jeremy a second to pull this up here. So we're going to ask if you've done any of the following. So have you shared a story on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or other social media? Have you read a book or graphic novel or listened to an audiobook? Have you kept a written or a video journal? Have you told a loved one about your day? Or have you created a scrapbook for yourself or other people? So we'll give you a minute for folks to put in their responses here. All right. Well, those are pretty big numbers. What do you think, Stephanie? You're muted, dear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. I mean, that's the heart of what we are talking about, is that this storytelling is is very much a part of our daily lives, and a very
Abs
important one.
Absolutely. And, if you checked even one of these boxes, you're clearly already familiar with storytelling and the importance of narrative. And in fact, based on some of these responses, some of you might even be experts already at this point. But I think we still have some interesting things to share with you today. So let's talk a little bit about what storytelling is. So we'll let Jeremy close that poll. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. So let's talk about what storytelling really is. And storytelling at the most basic level is sharing a story or narrative. And a lot of you spoke to that in the responses that you just gave, that idea of sharing, of things being personal, of it being this opportunity to connect. So since we use narratives in many parts of our lives, today we're focusing on strategies that are most commonly used in healthcare specifically. So recognizing that storytelling, absolutely, a lot of people put in like fun and entertainment. It certainly can be a fun and entertaining way to socialize with others. Telling stories by a campfire, sharing an Instagram post of your latest trip are great ways to connect with friends and family and build those relationships. But storytelling can also be a powerful tool for sharing health information and shaping behavior. So let's start by talking about some of the reasons that using stories is so successful in health messaging. So storytelling is a natural, familiar way humans communicate. And because it's familiar, there is greater openness to receive messages this way. It's less intimidating and generally more welcoming to a larger group of people. Storytelling also evokes an emotional response that helps people focus and keeps their interest, something a number of you mentioned in your comments. So unlike statistics, stories allow people to experience emotions. Research shows that creating an emotional response through a story increases audience focus and interest in the topic addressed, and it can help them remember what they experienced more clearly and for a longer period of time. In addition, our brains process stories differently than statistical data and can make us more likely to change our behavior. Studies show that the brain processes stories in a different form than other forms of information sharing, and that audiences view narrative communication as more personal, more realistic, more believable, and more memorable. These findings are backed up by the fact that when audience members become immersed in a narrative, a narrative and its characters, they're more willing to believe the information being shared and more open to changing their minds, their attitudes, and their beliefs. And finally, storytelling is an essential element of many diverse cultures. Many societies have long established storytelling traditions, and this remains the preferred way to share ideas and knowledge. Now that we've talked about some of the research supporting the use of storytelling, let's highlight some specific ways storytelling can be useful within a healthcare context. So specifically today, we're going to highlight 3 forms of storytelling that already exist within the healthcare field and showcase what they are and how they can be used to improve the lives of patients and healthcare professionals. So we're going to start with narrative medicine. So the goal of narrative medicine is to deliver more empathic, humanistic care to patients and sustain the professional and personal commitment of providers within a frequently challenging healthcare system. So narrative medicine is medicine practiced with the ability to acknowledge, absorb, interpret, and act on the stories and plight of others. And while traditionally it's focused on the patient-provider relationship, it can be and has been used in many health professions and by many health professionals, including nurses, social workers, and community health workers. So to get a better sense of what this actually looks like, we're going to watch part of a brief video highlighting what narrative medicine is in action.
You've probably heard this conversation starter many times before. Tell me about yourself. You might answer with your name, where you're from, and maybe a fun fact. Whether you've thought about these details deeply or not, they lay the foundation of a story that reflects you. The building of this story plays a critical role in narrative medicine. Narrative medicine is the practice of mindfully contextualizing a patient's lived experiences to better care for and treat them. It's an approach to healthcare that considers not only the physical, but also the mental and emotional aspects of a person's health. By seeking out a patient's story, clinicians can gain an in-depth perspective of their patient and ultimately see a whole person, not just a diagnosis. Narrative medicine requires a vast array of skills. Clinicians must be able to listen to, comprehend, and act upon a patient's story. Sometimes a patient's story isn't clear-cut, so clinicians also need to be able to navigate its nuances. This set of skills is called narrative competence, and clinicians can improve their narrative competence through creative expression. Narrative medicine provides a solution to common challenges faced by clinicians and patients. A clinician cannot rely on their medical knowledge alone to prevent, diagnose, and treat illnesses. If they cannot communicate and connect with their patient, the patient may feel neglected, invalidated, or even hesitant to return for another visit. In some cases, a clinician may miss the correct diagnosis, or the prescribed treatment may be ineffective. If a patient is from a marginalized population that has suffered historical, racial, or other categorical trauma, the disconnect can be even larger. The most common sources of disconnect between a clinician and a patient are known as the 4 divides. These are obstacles that hamper the development of a strong patient-clinician connection. The first divide is differing views on mortality. While clinicians primarily encounter illness and death through their work, patients often react more strongly based on their personal experiences. The second divide is the context of illness. Most clinicians see illness as a phenomenon requiring medical intervention, while a patient may see illness as the effect it has on their life and on others. The third divide is differing beliefs about the causes of disease. Not only do clinicians have extensive medical training, but their knowledge is also valued more than their patients', creating an unequal balance. The final divide is vulnerability. Patients may be hesitant to share personal details about their lives, and a clinician may be hesitant to inquire, making the process of diagnosis and treatment more difficult and stressful. Through conversations, narrative medicine can result in more personalized care with improved health outcomes. Researchers at the University of New England found that veterans who were asked to share their personal stories experienced less chronic pain than those who were not. Additionally, clinicians who listened to the stories of veterans experienced less emotional burnout. While there are many accounts of the healing benefits of narrative medicine, there are constraints to the approach. First, there is a limited amount of empirical evidence on the effectiveness of narrative medicine, the training needed to practice it, and how it relates to disease and illness outcomes. Narrative medicine also takes time, and how to manage that time efficiently is a concern for incorporating it into modern medical practices. Additionally, narrative medicine is a tool, not a cure. Clinicians need to understand that using narrative medicine does not guarantee a smooth patient-provider relationship. Finally, narrative medicine cannot fully capture someone's entire story. This stance is known as narrative humility. Although the field of narrative medicine is relatively new, the use of stories within patient-clinician care is not. In fact, storytelling has a long history in medical practices outside of Western medicine. Ngoma is just one example of this. By combining stories with rhythms and dance, the ceremony has been a source of traditional healing in Central and Southern Africa for countless generations. Narrative medicine continues to be introduced on both national and global scales. Initiatives that utilize the approach have sprouted in the United States, England, France, Taiwan, and Pakistan. Medical schools and other healthcare institutions have incorporated narrative medicine courses and workshops into their curriculum and community education, and narrative medicine is gradually becoming part of the Western medical norm. Narrative medicine helps bridge the gap of misunderstanding between clinicians and patients, and by doing so, connects individuals with themselves, others, and the diverse landscapes in which they all live. Everyone has a unique story, and narrative medicine seeks to honor these stories to build a healthier and more connected world.
So, as you can see, narrative medicine is not perfect, but it does provide some great opportunities for both patients and healthcare professionals. It strengthens provider-patient relationships by bridging some of those traditional gaps and allowing providers to see a patient as a whole person. It empowers patients to share more about their thoughts and experiences, providing more data that can be helpful when it comes to like making healthcare decisions. With more information, providers and patients can make better, more accurate decisions about treatment or care. Finally, narrative medicine can help providers feel more connected to their patients, feel more confident in their recommendations, and reduce burnout. So now that we've talked about narrative medicine, let's move on and talk about another example of storytelling in the healthcare realm. So this is digital storytelling. So digital storytelling is the use of multimedia story that usually takes the form of a short 3 to 5 minute video. And in a healthcare context, the goal is usually to educate healthcare professionals, patients, or families about a healthcare issue or experience. So to highlight what we mean, let's watch a quick example of a digital storytelling in action.
I'm Margot Kirkland, and I'm HIV positive. In 1991, I was pregnant with my third child. During a routine visit with my obstetrician, I decided to take an HIV test. A month or so later, it was discovered that I was HIV positive. I never thought that I would become HIV positive. We knew very little about women becoming HIV positive. At that time, I was advised to terminate my pregnancy. And of course, I decided not to do so. My daughter Hollis was born January of 1992. She survived for 26 months and she died through transmission of perinatal infection of HIV. We haven't come that far in our understanding of HIV. We still have a very long way to go. The medical community, they're doing absolutely wonderful things now to allow people to live longer, stronger, healthier lives. There's all these wonderful things that are happening now, but still in a lot of areas, in a lot of communities, folks still look at HIV as being a death sentence. Stigma and discrimination is just as much alive and well today. We need to change the way we think. We need to reset that button. I didn't become an HIV advocate because I'm brave. I'm a mom, first and foremost. The legacy that I want to leave my children is that I'm a fighter. I have a virus. That's it. I'm not a survivor of HIV. I'm thriving.
So we'd really like to hear your thoughts about what you just saw. So we're wondering, what did this digital story do right from a public health perspective? So as the experts in public health, what do you think that this digital story did right? Or what it didn't do right? That's okay too. We really just want to have some feedback. What did you think about this as an approach? Okay, so Alyssa says it was emotional and you could connect to her and feel her. All right, somebody says my story. Yeah, you can feel it. It's educated and humanized. Yeah, okay, absolutely, that human element. Yeah, and it allowed her, I love that, Kim, that it let her be the expert, right? So instead of a healthcare provider being the expert, she was the expert, which is important. Oh, captured your attention. Fantastic. Yeah, that's definitely what we hope these kinds of things are going to do. Yeah. Other thoughts? Easy to read writing. Yeah,
Yes.
that is true. Yeah. Visual. Oh, so I missed this one. So visual, colorful, rich. Yeah, really beautiful like visuals there. Yeah, and I see creativity in there. Okay, excellent. Any other thoughts? Feel free to come off your mute as well. Insightful from a personal perspective. Yeah,
This is
absolutely
great
excellent.
feedback. This, by the way, this is just wonderful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
moving and impactful. Great. Yeah. Everyone who is a mom can relate. Yeah, I agree, Maureen. I know for me that definitely is a piece that connects to me. Hopeful. Yeah, I think so too. So talking about something maybe that's difficult, but looking at it. I think it works for a certain demographic, but not all. Okay, and I think that's fair. Kiana, that is a really good point. And if you want to fill in, I don't want to call you out on this, but if you'd like to offer some detail about that, I think that's a good conversation point.
Yeah, mine. What I meant by that was, um, I honestly can't see some like that type of video and like just the way it was done, and then of course like the story relating directly to like younger demographics, just because they're used to a certain pace of things and a certain and a certain and have certain interest or disinterest in health and things like that. So visually, there would be a certain way to appeal to a broader demographic of people, but I think it did its job. But it seemed a little bit outdated, and I feel like that would lose some of the younger demographic for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a fantastic point. And I think that's so important, is to recognize that how these are designed and where they are designed for makes a big difference. So, for example, using TikTok these days instead of maybe using a web-based service, and recognizing that even the visuals, the way that something is produced, makes a huge difference. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important to keep in mind as your audience. All right, other thoughts? That was a really good point there. All right, so I see expert by experience. A visual speaks 1,000 words. I think there's a lot to be said for using some of those images, right? People first language, I have a virus. Yeah, I love that too, Ursula. So, even changing how we think about, it's not these people or them, it's us, it's me, I have this. And so that change in language can really shift how that message is perceived. Okay, any other last thoughts? I don't want to wrap up before folks have their say, but I do want to make sure we get to our last piece of the narrative portion that I'm going to talk about, or the last piece of the storytelling version that I'm going to use today. So I think we're probably ready to move on, Jeremy, if you don't mind flipping us to the next slide. So, as we can see from Margot's story, the impact of HIV on African American women remains a significant challenge, but it doesn't have to stay that way. So, digital storytelling and encouraging patients to tell their stories can empower patients, allow them to see their own value as educators, and literally give them a voice, which a lot of you recognized. It also provides a rich source of data that health systems can analyze to make improvements in service. So this can include revealing hidden stories and experiences that affect patient satisfaction, but might not have surfaced in other types of surveys or data-seeking tools. And it also opens up community dialogue about important issues that are affecting people and their communities. So lots of potential value, but certainly recognizing the importance of tailoring these messages. Now, let's move on to talk about our last example of storytelling, graphic medicine. So graphic medicine is the use of comics to tell personal stories of illness and health. So I'm going to ask, just with a show of hands, so real or virtual, whatever you want to use, how many people here either enjoy comics themselves or have someone close to them who enjoys comics? So do we have any folks for whom that's the case? Okay, looks like we have some hands. All right, some hands coming up. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to see a number of hands. Anybody else? Okay. So a few people, not a whole lot, but a few people, which is totally fine. But I'm wondering, if you wanted to make an educated guess, why do you think that millions of people really love this format of expression? So why do people like comics so much, that we have millions of people using this as a form? And you can type in the chat or you can unmute. Either one is fine. What do you think? Quick and easy to read, visual learners? Yeah, absolutely. Light. Okay, so Carrie, are you meaning just like not super heavy, easier for us to process?
Yes, that's what I mean. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, okay, so short form, graphic heavy. Yeah, absolutely. Lightens the load of information being consumed. Yeah, it lets me visualize and enjoy the story. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah, I think those are all really good reasons for why there's a tendency to really like this visual, this graphic way of representation. So to sort of show what this looks like in a healthcare context, we're going to move to the next slide. And you're going to see here, this is looking at an example of graphic medicine for someone who is deciding to get a COVID vaccine. So we see an image of a woman watching probably television of some kind and sees information represented for getting a COVID vaccine. And so, from this, we see her now move. She's on a smaller screen. Looks like she's talking with friends or family, using social media of some kind, maybe asking questions, maybe reaching out to other people to learn more. All right, so now we have an image of her in contact on a phone with a healthcare provider or somebody at the public health clinic. Then we move into seeing her standing here. We see the 6 feet apart, waiting in line for that vaccination. And then finally, the process of receiving that vaccine. And so without even really saying a word here, just with graphics, we're able to show the process of deciding to get that COVID-19 vaccine, which is a very different strategy than what we may see in terms of leaflets or flyers or other types of information. So actually, graphic medicine can be so influential for a few key reasons, some of which you already named. So first, this approach to patient education is easy to read and it doesn't require a high level of health literacy. So the reliance on both pictures and text ensures that it's easy to understand and allows the brain to process both images and words, which it does slightly differently, which makes it more engaging. Graphic medicine typically tells compelling stories about personal experience with health or healthcare and effectively transports the audience into that scenario, which we've talked about is important for people remembering and really being willing to potentially change behavior. And finally, research shows that by transporting the audience by way of captivating characters and gripping scenarios, graphic medicine can be very effective at gaining audience buy-in and can successfully influence even long-held attitudes and beliefs. So we have spent the first half of our session defining storytelling, walking through some of the reasons it's so successful, and highlighting a few strategies that use storytelling to improve the healthcare experience. So now let's move forward to examine how you can transform the data you collect into powerful storytelling tools. And for this, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Stephanie. So take it away, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Routine Flaherty. Thank you so much. Well, now let's talk a little bit about how to move from numbers to narratives. We've seen the value of narratives in healthcare and in public health. Let's talk about what you can do if you have data sets, if you have numerical data, and you want to craft a story. You want to make a story from your numbers. How do we start doing that? So just to get a rough idea here, how many of you collect and or analyze numerical data? And here this is a poll. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Look at that. That's wonderful. 90%. Wow, more than 90%. That is fantastic. And are they specific to public health and healthcare? Maybe in the chat, you could alleviate our curiosity as to what kind of numbers, what kind of research you are doing. This is fantastic. 89%, 87%. Wow. Okay. But hopefully we will provide some tools that are helpful to convert those numbers to data. That's fantastic. And should I share the results? Shall I share the results? Dr. Routine Flaherty? Yeah, okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to use these numbers that you are, the great majority of you are collecting and analyzing to craft stories. So the first and foremost, and we know this as, you know, data collectors and healthcare practitioners, a thorough analysis of accurate and complete data serves as the foundation of your story. This is the foundation of your story, is accurate, complete data. Now, when you are collecting this data, especially if this is involving human populations, just remember that if the assessment, if the research includes human subjects, you may need to get, you need to get their informed consent. You need to get participants' informed consent. And if you are publishing the material or you are disseminating the material publicly, You may also need to get approval from an institutional review board. You have to abide by the HIPAA regulations and such. Just a reminder that since we are dealing with numbers, but behind those numbers are human beings, and we want to protect their rights. So now, stories without accurate data, right? Since accurate data is our foundation, stories without accurate data, as we all are familiar with, including myself, I'm painfully familiar with within my own family, they can be dangerous. They can be dangerous. It's some people call it an infodemic. You know, we have so much information, we have so many stories, many of which are not based on good data, on sound data, that you get a lot of potentially destructive stories that go, you know, take on a life of their own, usually on social media, on the internet, but also, you know, as common lore, common myths and misconceptions. So this is one example from the Breakfast Club. This was in 2020, where, and this is just one example. I'm just picking this one, but this is a theory that has gained steam and has captured the imagination of many Americans, where a very outspoken host, Charlemagne the God, says on the radio that millions will line up to take the vaccine, and boom, microchips for all of y'all, right in time for beep Thanksgiving. I cannot repeat what he said there in this workshop, but that caught steam. He was one of the first people to articulate that. It's not that the theory was new. This is an older idea behind vaccines, but he gave it a special life in a social medium, right? And so, and social media in particular is something of a conduit for this infodemic of stories that are not based on sound data. So let's talk about sound data. Let's like not these not stories that are not based on data, but rather we have numbers. These are from a more credible source. These are from the CDC, these numbers. And let's say that you are doing research and you have collected this information, this numerical information on uptake rates, right? On the number of COVID vaccine doses distributed and administered in the United States as of February 23rd, 2023. And you can see that a few things from this graph, right, that you can put into words, right? I mean, you see the decline in the uptake, and you see particularly the bivalent booster is suffering some very, very low, comparatively low uptake rates as compared to people who have completed the primary series and people who have received one or more doses of the vaccine. So how do we tell this? And well, we start you putting it into words, like just as I am doing. I'm kind of starting the process. We want to start crafting stories from the numbers, right? And we want to use the numbers at first. We really want to use the numbers to craft our story, because that's where the story is, right? You are looking at trends, you are looking at changes in data, you are looking at multiple variables that can affect data, that can be data in itself. So let's carve out a story. So as of February 2023, this was the CDC took a stab at it and they did a great job. More than 53,350,000 Americans have received the bivalent booster against COVID-19. This is a dramatic decrease, because that was the data. The data was telling us that it's going down. A dramatic decrease from the almost 230 million people who completed the primary series, or the almost 270 million people who received one or more doses of the vaccine against COVID. So what can we extrapolate? What did the CDC extrapolate from this core numerical data? Okay. Okay. Yeah. This was a separate. I'm sorry. This was the why. They were alarmed firstly with the decline, and so based upon community and community engaged research, which hopefully we will get just a second to talk about later on, they uncover that much of this decline is due to popular myths, misconceptions, just like Charlemagne the God was promoting, and viral disinformation. Now, this is a grave problem, and this leads to number 3, because if this trend continues, many more millions of people are vulnerable to severe illness, hospitalization, and even death. And so what do we do? What can we do against the infodemic, against the misinformation? Leads us to our last point. Yeah, thank you. Communities and healthcare professionals must support vaccination initiatives with educational campaigns that go beyond clinical settings, right? That go to where people live and work and play and can be exposed to accurate data. Now, there are 4 major ways in which you can start to analyze data, numerical data, for a good storyline. You can rely on descriptive storytelling. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm here. What happened? So you want to tell me what happened. And I will give you another example, not a COVID, but another example with cholera in Haiti. So let's take this is global public health, but it's public health. So in Haiti, I don't know if you remember this, but in 2010, there was an earthquake. And that earthquake was absolutely devastating. And soon following the quake, you see the worst outbreak of cholera that small island nation ever had, with over 800,000 people affected with the illness and over 10,000 deaths. And so people ask, what that's the what, right? That's the descriptive, what in the world happened, right, to create this epidemic outbreak in Haiti. And so people, in this case, explaining it was easy. I mean, it's not usually, especially with chronic disease, the why can be maddening, can be very difficult to pin down. But in this case, this was the collapse of the sanitation infrastructure, of their water, of clean water and sanitation. And that was the reason, that was the why, the diagnostic, right? So the why did this happen? And UN officials, after surveying much of the damage and seeing the scope of this epidemic, they concluded, they gave a prediction, right, which is predictive data analysis. What is going to happen in the future if we don't tackle this? You know, as an international community, the cholera could only get worse, and worse than that, it can become endemic within the nation. So what should we do? Prescription, right? This prescriptive analysis. What should we do? Well, the United Nations and the World Health Organization thought the data was sufficient to warrant a major humanitarian campaign, including rehydration packets for cholera sufferers and aid money for infrastructural development, as well as educational interventions for the public. So that's just an example of some of the different ways that you can analyze data to create that story, or to pull the story from those numbers. So let's practice a little bit with these different forms of data analysis. Can you match the narrative to data analysis type? This is a little bit fun, because then you can start moving numbers around and moving the information around to fit the different forms of data analysis. The what, the why, what might happen, and what should we do? I'll give you a few minutes here. Wow, you are amazing, 100%. What? Okay, we have an amazing group. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay, I think everybody has done. I don't want to cut anybody off. Is anybody still working on it? Do you need more time? No?
I think we still have a couple of people.
Okay, okay. This is great. These numbers are great. Okay. Wow.
I think you're probably okay to go ahead, Stephanie.
You think, okay, okay. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. I love that. I love that. So that's great. All right. So you have I'm sure many of you have participated in these very different forms of data analysis, and that's really fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful. So you know the answer to the, I'm sure many of you know the answer to this question. What do we do with all this data? I mean, we have analyzed it up and down 4 different ways: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. What do we do with this data? Well, we can combine them. These are different questions. The what happened and the why and the what should we do about it are completely different questions that necessitate different answers that necessitate different content. So what we can do, we can combine them to create a verbal or written story that can communicate insights that you have gleaned from the data. They can communicate context surrounding it. And they can communicate those actions, those prescriptive actions that you recommend and aim to inspire in your audience. So how do we combine them? Well, let's take a look at some major elements of a narrative. There are 4. Data storytelling actually uses the same narrative elements as any story. It's not this, in this case, it is no different. You need to have a setting, right? What is happening? You need to have characters, because people, they bond to characters. They can be transported through their emotional connection, as Dr. Ratim Flaherty pointed out, with characters, and they're less likely, if they identify with characters, to negate or argue against certain arguments, right, based upon the story. And so you need these things. You need a setting, you need characters, you need conflict, right? Because conflict, it doesn't have, if you don't have any conflict and you see just progress, like a sloped line going up in terms of your, let's say the bivalent booster, it's like, wow, you won, you did a great job. Everybody's going there for the bivalent booster. That's a success story that needs to be told too. But usually good stories involve some good conflicts. And of course, you want to see your conflicts resolved, right? You want to see some of the most controversial media today is controversial precisely because some people are upset that those stories don't have a resolution. They just end before there is resolution, leading to some discomfort in the viewer often, who is watching some of this media, these movies, these shows. So let's revisit our COVID data, right? So we read all this. And we matched it up with the different data analysis forms. But let's revisit it and see what Johns Hopkins, not just the university, but in tandem with the Bloomberg School of Public Health, what they did when they were confronted with CDC data that was showing this dramatic drop in the uptake of the bivalent booster. Well, they decided they were going to transform it. into a story that people could understand, that people could relate to, that people could act upon. And first you want to set the scene, right? If you're going to craft a story, you want to set the scene. And this is what they did in their campaign. Was the first thing they did in their campaign. Describe the context that your data is presenting. And this pulls a lot, again, from the descriptive data analysis that we just spoke about. They took this information and they made it almost completely narrative, or really completely narrative, except for the year. Despite the enthusiasm for the COVID-19 vaccine rollout in late 2020, there has been a dramatic drop in patients receiving the bivalent booster. So you can see it's plain language. It's plain language friendly. And they take out the numerical data, and simplification like this often works. Taking it out while making the same argument with words, that sometimes works, especially when you're dealing with very large numbers, that are difficult to digest. This was the case even when they could benefit most from its protection or had received their previous shots. Now you carved out a setting. Now you want to highlight the conflict, right? Which is largely the why. What the diagnostic, why is this happening? Well, this was the research from the CDC, right? And they take it and they go farther. They say viral disinformation and popular misconceptions prompted millions of people to forego the bivalent booster across the United States. And they found another piece of data that was also based on community engaged research that showed that people who believe in the bivalent booster as a protective measure often don't know what to say to those who disagree. Right. So I can speak to that personally because I don't know how to talk to my brother about this. Like I have no idea how, because there are so many myths and misconceptions that you have to be an expert in everything. So how do we do this? Like, how do we tackle this so that we can combat this conflict, this misinformation and misconception? You can do a Q&A, as does the NIH or the CDC or Johns Hopkins itself. Like, you can draw the data from the data and create and encourage conversations, right, that address these misconceptions. Sometimes they have like Q&A. If you go on the website for the FDA or the CDC or the NIH, they'll have like Q&A for common myths and misconceptions for the COVID-19, which is like a conversation. But Johns Hopkins, they take it further, right? They're like, wait a minute, this is a dangerous situation, right? The predictive analysis is that many more people are vulnerable to severe illness, hospitalization, and even death. So we're going to have to make a compelling story, right? That uses conversation as a medium for resolving the conflict, right? And so they create some very compelling. I mean, it's not deep character development, but it's some compelling characters. They introduce or under vaccinated people talking to vaccinated and concerned family, friends, and coworkers. So these are conversations that they are introducing through these characters, via these characters. Notice how they eliminate the health workers. I found that interesting, and it may be to make it even more conversational and even more something that is very much a non-clinical intervention, educational outreach and intervention. And characters, you have to say, I mean, characters, good characters are really important in any great story. So they resolve the problem or the solution, right, with an educational campaign that is based upon conversation, right, between these characters. Have a conversation, they said, using these talking points. So they're giving talking points to people who are uncomfortable confronting family, friends, coworkers who are not interested or have doubts or other misconceptions about the vaccine. And so here you see the graphic, that introducing that graphic aspect. Do you know somebody who hasn't gotten their bivalent booster? probably. Here are some ways to talk to them about it. I should have seen this before Thanksgiving. That would that would have been really great. Now those conversations, they ranged. I could not display the full campaign that was appeared on Facebook. It appeared on Instagram. It appeared on LinkedIn, where these were various questions about, like, for example, apathy. Oh, well, I can still catch it. Why should I even bother? And then they explain, well, it's not just, the purpose is to help you bounce back faster and keep you out of the hospital, and it's doing this well. Or they have conversations about vaccine effectiveness, because some people say, well, another one, come on, I have to have another one. If they work, why do I need to have another one? Well, yeah, okay, they're effective, but the immunity wears off over time. And these are different variants that are cropping up that we need to address immunologically as a community with something like the bivalent booster. And conversations, and see how they integrate technology, because people are texting and people are on social, and so they're integrating this too into the story, because stories and narratives can these things pop up everywhere. I don't really care if I get COVID. Like, it'll be fine, right? It's fine now. It's not, and then the response, of course, is it's not all about you. It's about the community. It's about protecting the people around you, your kids, your parents, your partner. They even insert a little humor here. Do it for your dog. Like, he he needs to take a walk. And even the cats love you, like that. that kind of argument. That we're almost out of time. Yes. Okay. Based on this data, you can also, before we move on, I'm sorry, Jeremy, can we move just up just for a second? Based on this data, you can also propose a long-term resolution or goal. So the resolution is the conclusion of the narrative, but it can also be an institutional conclusion. It can be a goal or resolution within your organization to provide sustainable and consistent educational outreach. And so you center marketing, you center public relations efforts to make this pivot across segments. I'm sorry, Jeremy, that was my aside. Now, storytelling, visualizations, you've seen it in so many different ways, like in digital storytelling and graphic medicine. In this very discussion, they can be useful. Charts, graphs, diagrams, pictures, videos, they can be very useful and very effective. And there's a really neat tool that we found, a visualization tool that we found that anyone has access to. If you just type in www.iconarray.com, you can put in values and they will pop out graphs and charts according to your specifications. And they're very user-friendly. It's a great tool. If you need to put your data into a visual format, I absolutely recommend it. Oh, have we reached the end? And here are our resources to learn more. We have some great resources here on data storytelling, on graphic medicine. And yes, we can, definitely. On storytelling and culture, and on health data sources from the National Library of Medicine, which kind of walks people through how to gather data, what the data is that they're gathering through the National Library of Medicine. Thank you so much for joining. I'm sorry I'm a little over time. Thank you everyone for joining this discussion today. We hope that this has been helpful to you. Please take a look at the summary, at a summary handout in your inbox soon, and we are placing the survey link in the chat. So please take this survey to share your thoughts about today's workshop, as well as future workshops. And of course, we will be providing the taped, the recording for KCHD. And please don't feel shy about connecting with us. Thank you for your time, and good luck out there using these storytelling skills. Thank you so much for participating.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
This is a great group. I love this group.